this. I gave fans a couple of hours to kind of just digest that loss because there's a lot we can get into. But I wanted to kind of get your take because I know you were down there. Like overall, what did you think of this game tonight?
Yeah, man. I got to start off. Everybody at LCA, it's been a lot of great energy in that building so far. Fans have really been bringing it. It's been a lot of support. Everybody's been, excited for a new fresh start this season. Just wish they could have, capped it off with a great win. A lot of good back and forth. I tweeted this. It kind of felt like a 0-4 Pistons game where it was a lot of defense, a lot of stops, a lot of like black and blue type bruiser basketball. And it really came down to who was going to get hot at the end. And unfortunately, the Pistons made a lot of mistakes. They couldn't, clean up the glass. It really felt like they missed Jalen Duren today. They allowed 17 offensive rebounds to the Rockets. And then Tari Eason just killed them in that second half. Like they couldn't stop him on the glass. They couldn't stop him with scoring. He made a lot of good plays defensively. He was the X factor that turned a lot. And like they really struggled offensively as well as a team, really outside of Cade Cunningham. So, it was an intense game. Wish they could have wrapped it up with a W. Another close one. It seems like they've had this constant battle against close games they've had to finish with the last few seconds. So, they're gonna have to learn to be better for it as the season goes on. So it's gonna be another growing pain for them to get through.
Yeah, the past 3 games, I'm telling you, man, this team's taking years off my life. But I'd rather be at the edge of my seat than have 20, 30 point blowouts. The fact that they're competing, I feel like the Knicks game was the only game that like really got away from them. And we're 11 games into the season. So 10 out of 11 games, they've been in it down the stretch. I thought just first quarter, Houston's rebounding, I thought was going to be a problem the entire night. It seemed like
Mm-hmm.
we just could not contain a defensive rebound. If we did get a rebound, we couldn't hold on to the ball. And I thought that was a really big point of why they did lose the game. That and the turnovers again, which I think it's just kind of a theme this season, is not taking care of the basketball at the end of the
Oh
day.
yeah.
But I think overall it was a really good game. I really wanted us to just beat the Rockets because you know how their fans get. Like, I'm cool with some Rockets Twitter guys, but man, they
Yeah.
talk just like wildly disrespectful.
They got a lot of ammo today too. I'm not gonna mention what happened.
Yeah.
I'm sure they've been tweeting about it enough, so I ain't gonna add that shade on. But it was a tough one. It was a game with a lot of energy that both teams didn't want to lose. I mean, they're both kind of in terms of roster construction, they have a lot of similarities. Young foundation pieces with the veterans that they want to try to help build around. They kind of kept a lot of them at bay. I mean, Fred VanVleet didn't have the best game. But then again, Ivy and a lot of other Pistons kind of struggled too. And I'm willing to give him a little bit of grace on that because Ivy's been playing out of his mind for 10 straight games. He was due for a stinker sooner or later. So I'm not, going to freak out too much on the one bad game that he did put forth. And then they were able to catch a little bit of fire at the end. Malik Beasley made some huge shots in the second half. Tim Hardaway Jr. had a big and one. Beef Stew did a really good job. I really wish Paul Reed could have stayed, in the game. He fouled out in the fourth quarter. Şengün was a flopper to me. I'm not.
Oh,
I like his game, but the flopping, the traveling that he got away with, it was a lot of stuff that kind of got on my nerves. But he did a good job of putting pressure on the bigs and helping the Rockets close out that game. Again, they had opportunities to steal it away, but this is something that they're definitely going to have to take back to the drawing board.
I know you had mentioned like the veterans because they were down 13 at one point of the game, and Malik Beasley hit a three, Tim Hardaway Jr. hit a three, and then the and one. Um, it was weird because like when I was watching on TV, Cade had the and one, but they took back-to-back timeouts, and you never saw him on TV like shoot a free throw. So I don't know if he shot the free throw and missed it or what happened. But there's so much progress with this team because if that was last year's team and they were down 11, they probably would have lost the game. I think that happened twice. In the first quarter, they were down 11-2. JB calls a timeout and they get back into the game. So the fight and the will that they're showing this season, I think, is clear progress to like what we had to, cover and watch. As I know you're a beat reporter over at Clutch Points, and me doing this podcast, fans watching, like the product is so much better in 11 games. And the fact that we're kind of like in that like playoff play-in picture so far early on, I'll give it 11 games, but it's good to see them make, strides in the right direction so far.
100%. I talked to JB Bickerstaff a lot, when I can, post game, pre game, and just knowing how dialed in he is to these kind of details, it's just a night and day difference. I tweeted it yesterday because I was interested about what fans thought. If you had to give him a grade for what he's done over the first 10 games, a lot of high grades for him, a lot of A's, a lot of B pluses, a lot of A minuses. I gave him an A minus, and based on what he said today, it kind of spoke to the same things that, I was worried about or at least wanted to address with him. So he would talk about things like, look, we're not always concerned about wins and losses. We want to just start with building the foundation, taking the right growing steps, and then the results are going to come how they did. And I mean, even to an extent, that's kind of what happened today. They had a lot of good open shots. They did a lot of good things defensively, but unfortunately, Houston was maybe just a tad quicker to get the ball, or they were able to capitalize on the next possession and scoring where the Pistons didn't. So they had opportunities, and it shows that they are getting at least taking the steps to, make the right basketball plays. Like, there was a lot of plays early in the first half and maybe some of the third quarter. We look at they played a lot of one-on-one basketball. When the ball started moving a lot more, when you were able to find guys open in the corner, find, Beasley flaring over for a jumper, that's when they're playing at their best instead of being stagnant. And considering the scenario that they've had to go through where they've had big leads and they've had to learn to get it back. They've had big leads and had to protect it against teams like the Sixers. They've been down big and had to come back against teams like the Celtics or the Pacers, or even the Cavaliers. Like, there have been a lot of different scenarios, and you're seeing that kind of play a big factor in how they go and how they, maneuver through these late game situations. So even through these just 10 or now 11 games, it's been a big sample size of the learning and the development that we're seeing. And I think JB Bickerstaff deserves a lot of credit for how he's handled it with this young franchise.
Yeah, I was having conversations with some people. I was like, if JB gets the Pistons to 30 wins, his name will be in Coach of the Year considerations, given
It
what
should.
happened. But given what happened last year, I mean, having a
Yeah.
team that only went 14 games, I mean, I think they just won their fourth game of the season. I think last game, and they didn't have their fourth win of the season until January.
Right.
And I know tonight's game isn't what Pistons fans wanted to see, another heartbreaker. Down the stretch, there was a couple possessions where, to your point, Jaden Ivey has had, 10 solid games. I thought tonight there were instances where it felt like he was forcing things a little bit. I don't know, maybe you saw the same thing where he was trying to, force some like really wild, crazy like layups. Like, if they go in, great, it's a highlight reel play, but I'm sure he'll probably watch the film with the coaches and break down of like how he can be better and how he can not do that in maybe the next game he has, because I'm really expecting him to come out against the Miami Heat and be really aggressive and kind of shake that bad game off.
Yeah, Cade Cunningham as well. The backcourt definitely were going through some moments where they would miss a shot and then they would try to get it back, or they would turn it over here and they would try to get it back and make it up in the next possession. Cade, after that technical foul, like the very next possession, he just drove the ball full court and tried to get a layup and he missed it. So yeah, they were very forceful on a lot of things where they normally haven't been. Normally, obviously, when they're clicking and things are, working well for them, it's easy to say, oh, well, they're doing a good job of spreading the ball and not forcing things. But now when the shot is off a little bit and, defense is a little bit tighter, especially against the talent that, Houston has with Dylan Brooks and Amen Thompson, who did a really good job defensively, Tari Eason as well. They have some really good defensive wings. So when things get a little tighter and a little more difficult, you have to show that you're able to adjust. And unfortunately, they did a lot of forcing, and they missed way too many free throws. This has been a problem all season. And it's supposed to be like, if you were the bigs who were doing it, it maybe not be a bit of a problem, but it's Cade and Ivy that are missing the majority of them. And then Tobias as well, with the last one set that he had. Like, those are not the guys that should be missing free throws on this team. Those are the ones you should be able to lean on, and they should be hovering around 80 like they have been through the majority of their career. So, yeah, that was a little disappointing, but I'm sure JB is going to get in their ear about it soon.
Yeah, I'm sure that's something, because when sometimes I look at the stats and I'm looking at Ivy, I'm like 72%. That's really low for Jaden Ivey, because he's
way too low.
Around like 75, 78 throughout his career so far. in the NBA. Tobias has always been a pretty consistent free throw shooter. Same with Cade. I mean, I think Cade almost shot almost 90%. He was like around the 87, 88% range. But yeah, I think that's a big thing, not hitting your free throws. I mean, Tobias has a chance to tie the game, misses the first one. The fact that they got a rebound on forced at the free throw line twice to try to get them in the game. The fact that they got the ball twice, man, I was just like, there's no way they're getting the ball back again. And they almost tied it and scored again. The fact that they did that, I mean, like, shout out to them for trying to hustle on the offensive glass. But overall, this game was a heartbreaker, tough pill to swallow, but they're going to have to, lock in because you have an in-season tournament game against the Miami Heat on Tuesday.
Yeah, and a little bit of the good news for them is they're not playing the murderous road, first 20 games. That's the only pushback, and not pushback, but maybe grace I try to give Monty Williams from last season. The league schedule that they gave them was just unbelievably ridiculous. Now, at the very least, they're not sitting up here playing contenders only for the first 20, 25 games and whatnot. So, looking at Miami, Milwaukee, Toronto, Washington, Chicago, Charlotte, Orlando, who's still hurt. They have a pretty soft November to get through. So, knowing what they started off with against teams like Indiana, against teams like Boston, the undefeated Cavaliers, that should help you in games like these. And that's not to say that you should take those teams lightly. You should always be, as dialed in no matter who's on your schedule. But knowing that it's not, as crazy as it was last season, I think should lean them a little bit more assistance in their development. So, hopefully they'll be able to take advantage, of these next several games coming up.
Yeah, that the first 6 games were just brutal. The fact that they came out 4-6 in their first 10, realistically they could be 5-5 if they would have boxed out in Charlotte. If we're being honest, a lot of people during the summer, I'm sure I had you on during the summer when we were talking about the schedule, a lot of people are saying they might win a game. They might win 2 if they're lucky. The fact that they won 4 kind of shows you what JB said in the press conference this summer. He's actually doing it on the court. It's not just, PR talk out of his mouth that what we kind of were getting from Monty and Troy, in previous years. He's actually locking in defensively. The Pistons are one of the better defensive teams in the NBA, but they're one of the worst offensive teams in the NBA. So that's why these games are so damn close.